think we're live.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Asian American Pacific Islander Korean mukbang celebration. I'm so excited to be here with some of just, honestly, my icons. Amazing authors who have written stories that have honestly just touched my heart, brought so much of my culture to me, and I know to a lot of you. So I wanted to just kick things off. Obviously, we're doing a little bit of a mukbang. We're going to be talking about some Korean dramas. But wanted to kick things off and just do some introductions. Everyone wants to say hello, who they are. By the way, hi, I'm Monica Kim. I'm a booktuber. And yeah, if everyone wants to just say hello and what they're eating for our mukbang.
Okay, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Kat Cho, author of Wicked Fox, a Korean contemporary fantasy based on the myth of the Gumiho, which is a nine-tailed fox who has lived for 1,000 years and can now become a beautiful girl to lure in men, devour their energy, and live an eternal life. But it's more like a paranormal romance. It's not as dark as I'm making it sound. Lots of romance. And I am eating kimbap, which is rice and wrapped in seaweed, and there's usually different fillings, but I just went like very basic with egg and spam because that's what I like. And then Mandu, which is the Korean version of dumplings, and my Mandu is just pork and cabbage and onions. So it's very simple. And then I made myself a boba tea.
My name is Axie Oh. I'm the author of Rebel Soul and Rogue Heart, and they're like sci-fi dystopia novels set in the futuristic East Asia. And then I have an upcoming novel in 2022, which is a retelling of a Korean folktale, The Tale of Shimchang, and it's called The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. And I am eating a different type of Korean breakfast, which is fluffy toast from Patty Baguette. And then also some fruits. I got Korean pears, some oranges, and some pastries. And then I have my peach grape juice and my Ryan coffee. Yay!
You guys went all out. I went very simple. I'm Maurene Goo. I am the YA author of, I have all my books here, but I'll show you my latest. Somewhere Only We Know is my latest, about a K-pop star named Lucky who spends a day in Hong Kong with a cute boy named Jack. Who's that? Oh, this is hard to do with the mirror. There you go. I kept it very basic. And I made, hold on, let's see. Sorry, my desk is so small. Ramen, which is all like bloated now, but that's okay. It's still good. With egg and scallion that, of course, I'm growing on my windowsill like everybody else during this pandemic. And some kimchi, or more like gakdogi, which is like radish. And my drink is so boring. Water. I should have had a more fun drink, but you're going to watch me slurp noodles.
Exciting. I just realized I have to share mine. I went really basic. I did a bowl of rice and some kimchi, and then also my favorite dried spicy squid. I love. Just eat that every day. Awesome. Well, I guess we'll start off talking about our main topic, which are Korean dramas. I mean, just to kick things off, do you guys have a favorite Korean drama that you've watched that has sort of stuck with you, that you just love and recommend all the time?
Yes.
Yes, next question. No.
Which one is it?
I mean, I can think of two off the top of my head because they're fairly recent, and it's part of my. So I have like different phases of K-drama watching in my life. And the latest was when I was starting to do research for my book, I Believe in a Thing Called Love, which is about a girl who uses K-drama tropes to like. Cat, you have to just eat it. I'm like, should I eat while I talk? And so during that last phase of watching K-dramas, I got obsessed with Healer. So good. And then most recently, I would say it's like not new anymore, but Goblin is one that like really it's one of those dramas like I think about way after. I think about all the time, and I'm obsessed with it. Nominee.
I muted myself to eat.
It's not
Okay.
very mukbang of you.
I feel like we're doing like beginners level mukbang, where we're like afraid to eat on camera because we're talking about books, right?
I know.
But anyway, yeah. So I actually compare Wicked Fox to this one a lot because it's just like I love it so much. But Oh My Ghostess, which like on its surface, like it's definitely not that much like Wicked Fox, but like there's so much like mythology interspersed into it, and like the shamans definitely gave me lots of feels. At the shaman character, she gave me a lot of feels, so I definitely knew I wanted a shaman in Wicked Fox. But Oh My Ghostess is like a girl who can see ghosts, and she's really timid because of it. But she always dreams of being a chef, and she has like a huge crush on this famous chef, and ends up getting a job at his restaurant, and just like moons over him. And then a ghost possesses her body, and like the ghost's mannerisms is like really like out there and wild and everything. And so she ends up like helping this shy chef girl get with her crush. But the acting is like what makes it so good, because Park Bo-young, I don't know if you've ever seen anything she's in. She's also in Strong Woman Do Bong-soon. And then Sulgi, who I really loved in Flower Boy Next Door. They're both such good actresses. So they made the drama amazing. Yeah.
You have to mention that the ghost is a virgin, so she wants to.
Oh yeah. So she's trying to. I didn't want to like over-explain it, but like this isn't a spoiler. She's trying to like move on to the afterlife before she becomes like an angry ghost. Because if you stay too long in our world, you become like an angry ghost. And so she thinks that her like unfinished business is that she's a virgin ghost. And so she's like trying to like get with these guys. But it's PG-13. It's not like anyone can watch it, I would say. But like that is her motivation.
It's so good.
So good.
I'm glad you said only one of your favorite K-dramas, because if you had said your favorite K-drama, it would have been like an existential crisis. It would have been like, no. But I'm gonna mention one that I watched in like the past couple of years. It's a favorite, and it's Mr. Sunshine, who is the same writer as Goblin, Dokebi, and Descendants of the Sun, and The King. If you're watching it right now, it's on right now. It's the same writer, and it's about this. It takes place in 1900s Korea during Joseon Dynasty, and it's about this like low-class boy who, I don't know, by tragic circumstances, goes to America and then comes back as an adult as like a Korean American soldier during that time period, and he falls in love with this noblewoman who is a resistance fighter. And it's just like this beautiful drama. And I think Kim In-suk, the writer, is amazing. Like all of her dramas are so good. And I just wanted to like say that the main actor in that drama, Lee Byung-hun, is the producer, right, of I believe in a thing called Love. And we're like in the middle of eating. But yeah, so like that drama is just beautiful. Like if you love aesthetic, if you love historical, if you love like the beautiful hanbok, if you like Dokebi or Descendants of the Sun or The King, then you should definitely check that one out.
Yeah, I was telling Axie earlier that I was oscillating between saying Oh My Ghostess and Descendants of the Sun. And I really wanted to say Descendants of the Sun as a favorite because when you think about it, it's actually a show about nothing, but it's so addicting, right? Like it's so good. The chemistry between the actors is so good that you'll watch the whole thing like really fast. But like if you tried to write the plot on a piece of paper, you're like, oh, the show isn't about anything.
Yeah. It was like so wild. Like, every episode, you're like, what are they talking about? Like they're fighting they're like in a Greek island or something.
It's a fake like country that they made up.
But it's like looks like Croatia or something.
It's so good.
But the current between the leads was like, I mean, they got married and now they're divorced, sadly.
Yeah, we don't talk about that though. About the divorce.
Yeah, I think my favorite is actually also a recent one. It's Hello My 20s. I just love it so much. It's so like comforting to me now. Like I just keep rewatching it. but I love it because I love just all the characters and especially the main girls and how they develop their relationships. It was just so like refreshing for me when I watched it for the first time. I mean, I'd love to also know, on the flip side, what was your first Korean drama or your first K-drama memory where you like really understood, I guess, what you were watching?
Really understood.
I know this is a hard one probably for all of us because we probably all watched it with our parents or something, and we didn't know what we were watching. K-dramas were like a part of my life. Just like if you asked me, "What's the first TV show you remember watching?" I'd be like, "I don't know." But the one I remember when I first got like obsessed was it's in English. It's called "Star in My Heart." 별은 내 가슴에. Do you guys remember that? You might be too young. I'm probably a lot older than you guys, but it's like Anjeok. It's a total classic Cinderella story, which Korean dramas like they perfected the Cinderella story. It's literally about a poor orphan girl who a millionaire fashion designer and like a wealthy famous rock star both fall in love with her and fight over her. So love triangle, Cinderella story. She has an evil stepmother, evil stepsister, and then she ends up with the musician and he does his beautiful like concert for her at the end. And that was the first drama where like I watched it with my friends, my Korean American friends, like I think in middle school or high school, and where like I bought the like magazine about it, and you know I would go to like Art Box or Morning Glory at the Korean mall in LA, and I would buy like drama stuff. That was like the first time I really was part of like a K-drama fandom, I feel like.
You have Art Box in LA? Oh,
you know what? They might have sold Art Box stuff at Morning Glory, or there might be an Art Box
at
the Koreatown Plaza. Yeah, the big, like the oldest Korean mall, like in K-Town is K-Town, the Koreatown Plaza, and I think they did have an Art Box, unless I'm mixing it up with Morning Glory.
I'm gonna go. I'm going, and if it's not there, I'm gonna message you, Maureen. I'm gonna yell at you. I love Art Box so much. I do have a memory of watching a K-drama, like my earliest memory, but it's like traumatizing, but I'll tell the story anyway. Because like my parents definitely wanted to make sure that like we had a connection with my paternal grandparents who still lived in Seoul, because my maternal grandparents lived in New Jersey. So we would try to fly back to Seoul like every few years. And I was probably like 7, and my halmoni, halmoni is grandmother in Korean. So my halmoni was like watching her K-dramas, and she's definitely the type of woman who like even if her grandchild is bored, she won't stop what she's doing. She'll just be like, "You just do what I'm doing." And so she made me watch this K-drama with her, and it was a saguk, so like a historical drama. And the scene that I was on was this pregnant woman was like in the middle of a field all alone, and she goes into labor, and then she has the baby, but like she like loses so much blood that she passes out for a day. And then she wakes up again and her baby is dead. And I was 7. And I was like, oh, this is horrifying. And like, you don't even need to understand Korean to know how traumatizing that is. So I didn't watch a K-drama again for like 10 years because I was so traumatized. But then I watched Winter Sonata, Kyo Ryonga, which is like a little bit older. It's very, very melodramatic, but I loved it. It was really good. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys had this experience, but when I was growing up, my mother would rent dramas from the from the VHS rental store, and they would be like these like marked, I guess, videos of like episodes 1 to 5 or whatever, and it would be like go on and on and on. Every 2-3 weeks, we'd go and we'd pick up like the dramas in whatever episode was next. And I, at the time, my maternal halmoni, so you guys don't know, Kat and I are related. My father and her mother are siblings. So her, yeah. So my maternal harmony, so my mom, so not the one unrelated to Kat.
Yeah, the harmony that traumatized me is unrelated to Axie.
We only say good things about our other harmony when we're together.
We don't want each other to report back to that harmony that we're saying bad things.
But my maternal harmony lived with us. So like my mom would get her like the weekend dramas that were like 200 episodes long. And then my mom would get the like whatever popular drama was at the time. And then I would get the variety shows. So I would get like Inkigayo, like the K-pop variety shows, and then like X-Men, if you guys ever watched X-Men. But the first drama I remember watching with my mom was fully from like beginning to end was Full House. And that came out in like 2004 or 2, or I don't know. But I remember watching it for the first, like without subtitles on VHS with her. And I don't really know everything that happened, but I know it had Song Hye-kyo, who's in Descendants of the Sun, and it had Rain. And I was like obsessed with Rain as like a kid, and he's like in his 30s, so I don't know how old I was then, but I was like obsessed with him. So that was like one of my first like crushes was on Rain.
Oh. Didn't you go to?
I did go to Rain.
You went to Rain concert, yeah.
I'm so jealous.
And it rained on him. He ripped off his shirt and it rained on him. And I was just like,
it's like it's so appropriate.
I feel like I distinctly remember when I realized that Korean dramas could be about like young people, because my mom always watched like historical ones and ones that were more so about like, you know, people who were families and parents, and I was just like, and also would only listen to trop music. So for a long time, I thought that was it. and then one day I watched You're Beautiful, which is about a girl who like pretends to be her twin brother and joins a pop group. It's a whole thing. And I was like, wait, there's this whole other world. And it was a very exciting day for me. But on the topic of sort of Korean dramas and our history with Korean dramas, have you seen them have an effect on sort of your experience as being a diaspora Korean person, being a Korean American, and sort of within that, have you seen it also impact your storytelling at all?
Oh.
Yeah, I this is a very, because I wrote a book on K-dramas, I've had to like unpack like my history with K-dramas a lot, and a lot of my like promo and stuff that I did for I Believe in a Thing Called Love was kind of writing a lot of, not think pieces, because they're not really like that deep, but like, you know, kind of these reflective essays on why I chose K-dramas, what they meant to me as a storyteller. And I don't think I realized they were such a part of my Korean identity until I moved to Boston for graduate school. And I got there and I was like, all I wanted to do was watch K-dramas and eat Korean food. And it was like my connection to home, I realized. So when I would get homesick, I found a video store, or DVD store at the time, near Harvard, I think. And I would trek there, I'd take like 2 buses or something, and then rent a DVD. And I would go to the Korean grocery store next door and buy like kim or something, you know, like something very basic. And then one of my friends who was white at grad school would watch the K-dramas with me, and I would sit there and I would just translate the K-drama to her. And actually the K-drama we watched was one of the 4 seasons ones. It was Spring Waltz. And it was totally my way of feeling connected to being Korean, because in Boston, it really was very white where I was in my program. And I felt, and when I lived in LA, I didn't ever feel a need to be connected to my Korean roots, because I had a lot of family. I had a lot of Korean American friends. My high school was super diverse, a lot of Asians. So it wasn't like a thing. And then when I went to Boston, I was separated. I was like, oh, I feel this is like an important thing to me. And then as far as storytelling, yeah, Koreans are the best at writing romances. Like when you take apart, which I had to do for I Believe in a Thing Called Love, because I had to write like the 24 steps of falling in love through a K-drama, I had to really like pick apart and like look at K-dramas, like I studied them, and they are tropey, they are cliche, you know what's going to happen, but it works. It's like it's a formula that is tried and true for a reason. It's, but you know, obviously it could be done poorly, like any other kind of movie or TV show or book. Like you could do a crappy version of it. But when done well, and Korean people have like perfected it because they've been doing it for so long. Melodrama is like really effective for romantic storytelling, and also family storytelling, I think. Sorry, that was long.
No,
I'm
I
gonna eat
love
now.
I love that. I agree. I Believe in a Thing Called Love was a very important book to me as a reader. But I really like appreciated like how you broke it down, but like you also kind of didn't over explain things. It was very skilled, I would say, I have to say. But I also like agree that like the tropes really work in K-dramas when it comes to like the relationships, even though it is like constantly the same setup. But what I think like the reason why it really works is that like like I'm sure like actors everywhere are really like good at emoting, but like K-dramas really like focus on like how emotive the actors are. Like I know people make fun of those like freeze frames at the end where like they're all angsty staring at each other for like 5 minutes. But like it's very indicative of like how important like the emotional resonance is in K-dramas. And I feel like even though there are setups like say like You're Beautiful, there's like also like To the Beautiful You, which is also a girl dressing up as a boy, like and doing like funny things, like pretending to hide her identity and everything. But it translates differently because the way that they feel about it, like it's different, and the way that they show how they react to the situation is different, and it's because of like, you know, everyone's this answer, everyone is different. So I just like really like that part of K-dramas. But for me personally, like the way that I interacted with things, it was a little bit different than Maurene's because I mostly grew up in Central Florida, which there were no Korean people and very few Asian people in general. So my only sense of like my Koreanness or my Asianness came through my family and interacting with my family, like Axie. And my funniest story with that involves Axie was that I used to think that like Kuman was really cool because Axie did it. And I was like, oh man, I want to be more Korean like Axie. I want to do Kuman. And my mom was like, no, you really don't. And I was like, yes, I do. And she was like, you will thank me when you're older that I did not make it to Kuman. Like, she knew better. But like to me, it was like it was a connection to like Koreanness that I wanted more than like the homework. So like I didn't realize that certain things that my family did were actually super Korean. They weren't just like my family things. And one of the biggest things was humor, our sense of humor. And so like once I did start watching Korean dramas and Korean variety shows, and they would make jokes that like literally my cousins used to make when we were younger, I was like, oh, I get it now. Like this is what my sense of humor has always been. It's just that I had never been able to relate it to anyone else outside of my family because it is very Korean. So it helped me with that for sure, with kind of just creating, and I think humor is a great equalizer. Like it bonds people, right? Like if you can laugh with somebody about something, then you can bond with them that much faster. So that was a really important moment for me in like embracing my Korean identity. So and not to like be too much of a fangirl, but like that's also why I love your books, Maurene, is because you use a lot of humor in them. And some of it, like I'm like, oh, I would have made that joke when I was younger. So it definitely
That's a very Korean thing. You know, people are always like, Korean movies are so tonally weird. Like, how come all these Korean horror movies are also like really funny? And I'm like, that's Koreans, dude. Like, even if we're like a tragic baby drowning story, then suddenly there's a moment where like the family makes fun of the other person, or like physical comedy. I think about The Host, that funeral scene in The Host. I don't know if you guys watched The Host. One of my favorite movies. but there's like this sad funeral scene. Everyone's like, but then it like takes this comical turn. They're like wailing comedically. They literally get into like a fight, the brothers, and like one like kicks somebody in the stomach. And it's just like a very Korean sensibility to not take yourself too seriously.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, just growing up when like Korean dramas for me again were like books about Korean people, they're like mirrors, right? So it was one way to see you know, someone who was Korean, who was a queen, or was a adventure story, or the hero. In that way, that was really empowering to me. And that's sort of like how anime was to me too. Those sort of like on the peripheral of the media, of like American media, these things that I could find for myself and see mirrors for myself. That's sort of like what Korean dramas were for me, and K-pop. That's how like any sort of Korean media was that for me, like a mirror. But like specifically storytelling, it's interesting because like a lot of it's in hindsight when you realize you do these things because of what happened in the past, sort of thing. So like one of my favorite Korean dramas was Queen Sundup. It was like an older, like 50 episode K drama where the main it's about one of the only queens in Korea. She was queen during the Shilla period, the Three Kingdoms period in Korea, where it was Shilla, Kogdo, and Baekje, and she was the queen of Shilla. And she the main villain in the story was a woman. So it was sort of like this like her name was Michelle, and she was like this evil, but also like so interesting and like charismatic female villain character. And it was like the whole 50 episode drama was about like these two women like battling it out in this society that's mostly like patriarchal. And I like would love that so much. And when I wrote my first book, the main villain was a woman, and who was like a mother slash idol figure to my main character. And I think it was because I was so influenced by that drama. So I definitely think K-dramas influence my storytelling in that way. But like in specifics, I also do this thing where it's like if I'm gonna write a fight scene, I will like watch fight scenes from K-dramas. And I know, Kat, you do this with kiss scenes. I know you watch kiss scenes.
I have a whole private YouTube playlist that's just called Korean Kisses.
Yeah.
And it's all K-drama kisses.
Yeah. So like from like the point A to B, like you could for sure watch a scene and then like directly be inspired. So like in that way, it does affect the storytelling.
That's true.
That's actually, I can see that because Korean dramas is because we write YA. And not that you have to be chaste in YA, but you know, I feel like K-dramas are pretty, the way they present physical romance is kind of, you know, it's YA level. Like for me, like I write kind of younger YA, so it is like a good reference for like how can you like make a kiss feel so big? Because teenagers, a lot of times a kiss is big, you know, it doesn't have to be sex, like holding hands and kissing is like, if it's the first time of any of those things. And K-dramas really do that well, where like it feels so special, you know, and it's like this long, like slow burn lead up to it.
Yeah, the back hug. It's like there's certain back hugs in K-dramas that are so much more intimate to me than the hottest kisses in American television. I'm like, oh my God, he's hugging her from behind.
When the girl falls and he catches her, and then everything pauses and the music swells.
Or I really like it. Yeah, I like it when like she's gonna like walk out into traffic and he pulls her into his arms, and you can see her face being like, oh my God, what's happening?
and they did like a parody of that on Kim Bok-joo, remember? When he like pulls her and water splashes on her instead of him.
I know. He pulls her as a shield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so we kind of touched on this a little bit, but you know, looking at those K-drama tropes, are there ones that you don't really see, that don't really have an equivalent in Western media, that maybe you'd want to see more of, or just ones that you think would be refreshing maybe for people who aren't as familiar with the genre?
That's an interesting question because I remember, like you were saying earlier when you mentioned like the humor in K-dramas and movies, I thought to myself, I don't know if I would want that in Western media even. Like they did it, remember they did a remake of My Sassy Girl? I never watched it.
But like, the K-drama.
My Sassy Girl, the movie. They did like a Hollywood remake of it.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And like, you know, My Sassy Girl is so, like, the reason it's so funny is because of all of like the different Korean comedies, like Chugule, or like they like dress up in their like uniforms and go clubbing when they're adults, like things like that. Or like you won't know about it, or you know, it's a Korean thing because everyone wears uniforms in Korea. It's not necessarily like I haven't seen the Hollywood version, so I don't know like how they translated the humor. But in a way, I was kind of like, I was thinking, I was like, I don't know if I would want to see even like that sort of translation, but I do want to see more books like yours, Kat, or yours, Maureen, like where it's a Korean American story, or even like a story that's set in Korea from a Korean American audience or a writer, like where the humor is, where the Koreanness of it is preserved. Like I want more of those, and there's more things I want too, which I just don't even know about because I don't even know what the next step is or what the adjacent step is. So I'm like, positive and looking forward to it, but I don't know if I want like to see more stories or like Korean media in America that's not from Korean voices, sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. Because like I do think if they had done My Sassy Girl in English, but with all Korean American people, and it was from a diaspora like point of view, I feel like the humor could have still been present in a certain way. But then they could have had the Korean American aspect of it that would have refreshed the idea for a new audience. The thing that I wrote down for this was bromance, bromance, bromance in capital letters. And I don't think it's not done. I just think that like bromance in Korean dramas and even like in K-pop, right? Like in any Korean popular entertainment is like so seamless and natural and like unaffected. They're not like self-conscious about like hugging each other or putting their arms around each other, or even like you'll see K-pop stars giving interviews and one of them will like put their hand on the other's knee when they're like referencing each other, or like they'll just like they'll literally hug each other for like half of the interview. And they're not self-conscious about their affection for each other. And like I mean, like, I don't want to get into conversations about like toxic masculinity in like Western media, but like I do think that there's something to be said about like boys or male presenting people being allowed to like show each other platonic affection without it being like overly focused on in any negative way or like speculated on. Because I do think like I do think that it like allows boys to see that it's okay to like show your emotions and your affection, and also it's amazing. Like I don't know if you guys have seen like School 2013 or even like Descendants of the Sun, Sassy Go-Go. Like I could go on and on and on. There's Goblin. There's such good romance. So yeah.
Crash Landing Into You had really good bromance with the soldiers.
Yeah.
I think
so good.
Yeah, the bromance. I have a lot of thoughts actually on what you're saying because of how in Korean culture that stuff is acceptable for men, but then they have a whole slew of problems with actual gay rights stuff over there. So it's kind of this interesting like contrast of accepting certain behavior from men, and the toxic masculinity isn't there in that way, but then it's like so heavily entrenched in like a more systemic way over there. But I'm hoping that all changes, soon. It's with time and younger generation. I think that a lot of the stuff that is interesting about K-dramas that feels unique, other than like the classic romantic stories or like family stories, it's that it's specific to Korean culture or Asian culture, the situations that arise. Like, because so many of it is based on like little things that you're like, what's the big deal if you're a Western person, right? You're like, why are they agonizing over being a couple because one is rich or something and one is a CEO and one is like this girl is not like part of some wealth class that we don't understand in America, or even just like family obligations, like how, you know, children have so much wrapped up with their parents and how they represent their families. So I think that sort of thing, and also the whole like kind of chaste romance stuff too. Like the reason why these slow burns work so well is because it's very believable that like a 35-year-old woman would be like, ah, if a man like kissed her on accident or something. You know what I mean? Like it's so scandalous. So like I love comparing K-drama romances to like Regency era British stuff, because like what we're saying about like the back hug, that is equivalent to like Darcy holding Elizabeth Bennet's hand. You know, you're like, oh my God, they like touched hands. And when you watch a period piece like that, you do appreciate that in the same way that you watch a K-drama and you appreciate that level of physical, you know. And I actually don't know, like I'm Korean American, so I don't really know, is this realistic in Korea? And, you know, I have my Korean friends tell me like, no, God, people have sex, you know, before marriage, which you barely ever see. But there is like more of like a propriety as far as like a public, you know, like you don't hug people that much, even your friends. It's like, oh, especially like when you hug opposite sex friends, like people like laugh uncomfortably when you do that. They're like, oh, you're hugging me. And like kissing your boyfriend in public, like, you know, just like even a quick peck or something would be kind of like, whoa, like this is too much public displays of affection. So I do think like in that way, it's hard to translate a lot of what the appeal of Korean dramas and like how you get sucked into the romances and the stories have a lot to do with the cultural context.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's also been interesting, I feel like over the past few years, seeing a lot of the younger skewing K-dramas even change in that sense. Like I remember I watched the first episode of Love Alarm and they kissed in the first episode and I was like, what? This is wild. Or even like Hello My 20s with like how much they discuss like even just physical violence in that one and like sexual assault and the way that it's depicted was like so different for me from what I had watched previously. So even just like watching sort of the evolution of the Korean drama world has been really interesting.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I
remember Axie told me, oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, you told me to watch Romantic Doctor. You were like, watch Romantic Doctor. They kiss in the very first episode.
I knew you would like that. It's a good kiss too.
It's a good kiss.
It's a selling point.
Have you guys seen Extracurricular? It's on Netflix now.
I haven't.
It's like so different than a normal like it's not. It's like I would think it's like rated PG-13 or high. I mean, like because K-dramas are like YA books, right?
Yeah,
it's like a little bit more violent, more has some. It's like it was like kind of like Parasite, but for K-drama, for teen K-drama. Yeah.
Oh.
So like if you're like interested to see how like the development of K-dramas, like Extracurricular was really, really interesting. But it's like tragic. I mean, it's like, you know, it's not happy. It's not like it's not You're Beautiful. So but if you like want to watch something that's like Parasite, but like a K-drama, it's really good.
I'll have to check it out. Kind of going into a different direction, but you know, something that I loved so much about K-dramas and growing up with them is seeing how they played with Korean mythologies. I feel like I got a lot of introduction to Korean culture, history, and mythologies through that, especially because I feel like similar to Kat, I was in a very predominantly white area, like it was basically my family and that was it as far as like fellow Koreans. But I feel like there's often, I feel like this pressure though to be accurate or authentic or like Asian enough. Like I see it a lot sometimes even in like with like reviews and being like, you know, why was this even like billed as Asian or like this wasn't like authentic. And so, I mean, have you felt that pressure at all? And if so, how do you approach that?
I felt it with my first book my first book, which a lot of people don't know exists, is Since You Asked, and it came out in 2013. So Ellen's not here, but Ellen started We Need Diverse Books in 2014, I believe. And 2013 was an interesting time because it was like on the cusp of you can feel the people getting like they're dissatisfied, people, authors of color like us and readers that were like representation is really crap right now. And when my book Since You Asked came out, it's about a Korean American girl who, it's like very episodic. It's her sophomore year of high school, and she ends up getting her own newspaper column. She's very snarky, and it's like her family life and her friend life and her some boy stuff, but not really romantic. And my first trade review, which the publication shall remain nameless, but you can guess is very harsh. It basically, it hated my book, and I'm like, fine, whatever, you can hate my book. But one of the big criticisms was, you should read this other Korean American story that deals with identity more. Because they wanted my book to like go more into identity. And like I told you guys, I grew up in LA. I didn't have that teen identity crisis with being Korean. So it's not my story. And it's not a story to me. I'm like, okay, a lot of people can write that book. And it's an important book probably, but like, that's just not what I want to write, like a funny, what I wish I had read as a teen, which is about like a Korean American girl living her life like a normal teen with like some Korean stuff in there, right? Like her mom and her have kind of a hard relationship, blah, blah, blah. But like, she's not like crying over like having to bring kimchi to school, right? It's like not her drama. So that review was like so harsh because I was like, oh, they were expecting one story from a Korean American YA novel. They didn't like that it was like lighthearted and like, it was a pretty fluffy book. Even though I hate that word fluffy to describe my books, but I guess it would be considered fluffy. And so I'm like, if this was like about a white teenager, it would have been more accepted for what it was rather than like putting all these expectations on it. So yeah, it's crazy. And it's changed a lot since then for sure. Obviously. And now I feel no battle about my Korean representation because I feel like one of the things I always try to do in my books, and I think it's one of the reasons why readers are, they gravitate towards it, is because it's very authentic to my experience and I've known so many different kinds of Korean American kids growing up. Like we've all had different experiences. And so I have a very organic understanding of that experience. And I try to represent it in a way that isn't work for me, or like, I'm not trying to teach anybody anything or tell a story that I'm like, this story has to be told. I'm like, I have a fun story in mind about a food truck or a Roman holiday story, and I'm going to make them Korean American because I want to make my characters Korean American. And so I don't feel that pressure anymore, although I am very aware of like being respectful. I wrote a K-pop book, so I wanted to make sure I knew enough about K-pop, and I knew enough about the fandom, and I knew enough about what it's like to be in Korea as a teenager right now. I'm not Korean, so I want to make sure I get Korean facts correct. And I triple check all of my Korean words in my books because I realize, like, I'm sure, like, you guys can all relate to this as kind of like immigrant kids, but like our Korean words are not exactly always the correct word. No. We're like learning baby words. I learned so many times, like, oh, the word I use for this is like a preschool, it's like saying caca or something, or like, it's just like, oh, that's not the proper word. It's the word that my parents, like, they gave me the baby word and then it stuck to me. So I never assume that like my Korean is correct. I always run it by like my mom and then like my friend who's young. And so in that way, I'm trying to do the work and be careful, but I try to have faith in my own experiences since I am writing mostly about Korean American teens.
Yeah, that actually speaks to me on such a deep level, Maureen, because my book is a contemporary set in Seoul. So like that was my biggest concern. Like I remember when I first like had the idea for the book, and like it had never been there had never been a time at all where I could have ever considered it not being in Seoul. It just like really, because of the mythology and everything, like only fit there for me. But a family member who, you know, was very well-meaning was like, well, why don't you set in LA? Because there's a lot of Korean people in LA, and like maybe the Gumiho like immigrated to America. And I was like, I mean, fair. And it was definitely something that I very heavily considered for a while. But at the end of the day, like I needed it to be in Seoul. But at the same time, like that conversation like really drove home the fact that I really wanted to make sure I got it right. And if there was ever something that I wasn't sure about, I just decided not to include it. And I feel like this is a conversation I had with you, Axie, because I was like, oh, what if I say it like this instead? Oh, I remember. I wanted to include a joke about Anyang, and he thinks she's saying hello, but she's saying goodbye, because it's like the same word for hello and goodbye. But then I had to over explain it in English. And Axie was like, just don't include it. And I was like, okay. I thought it was so funny, or it's like so good and clever. But it was true though, because like when you're unsure of like how natural it might sound or how accurate it might be, I think that for me, I'd rather just not have it than to get it wrong. And so that was a really important thing for me too. And I also kind of did like kind of look at other books that are by people like white people, and they're set in like London, contemporary London. And those people never have been to London, but like they just describe however they want, and they use Google Maps and stuff like that. And no one is ever like, London, your contemporary London is inaccurate. And so I felt like I should be given some leeway. And as long as I'm like being respectful and actually doing research, and not just like, like just doing whatever I want and actually putting respect into it, then I would hope that people would give me a little bit of breathing room in the world that I created. Also, there's like magic in it. So
You're like, that's the fun part.
yeah, like if there's magic, then maybe this restaurant that doesn't exist anymore can exist still. Wow.
Yeah, for me, that when I was saying that to you, because I was thinking of my experience, and it's like things that I think might be wrong will like give me anxiety later. So I'm like, just don't put it in if you're gonna think about it. It's gonna like make you like go wild. Like, but yeah, a lot of what you were saying, Maurene, is a similar experience. I grew up in New Jersey, which has a very big Korean population, and all of my parents' friends were Korean and married to other Koreans, or like not. Like my best friend growing up was biracial, Korean, Indonesian. And so like just seeing all the different ways to be Korean made me like, no, but there is no one way to be Korean. There's no one right way to be Korean. But of course, like you feel that pressure, like maybe there's someone who's more Korean than you. Like I had that when I was younger, because I'm not fluent in Korean. I didn't go to Korean church like like a lot of my cousins and friends. And so, just when you compare yourself to other people, like my mom's friends who live in Korea, whose kids go to international school, who are fluent in Korean and English, like when you compare yourselves to them, you're like, oh, they're more Korean than me. But then I'm saying my best friend she's not Korean enough. That's what I'm saying about her. If I say that they're more Korean than me, right? So it's like, I would never say that about her. I would never say anyone is not Korean enough. So why would I say that about myself? Sort of like internal processing. So like, Maurene, when you were saying that about your first book, how like you kind of felt the pressure then, and then it kind of went away. It was kind of like that for me, where it's like I felt pressure in the first book, especially with language. Again, like I go so like stir wild about language, but after that, I'm kind of like stubborn. I still, of course, like now when I write from like my experience. Like I'll write a scene, like let's like in one of my books recently, I did a 2-day 1-night trip scene, and I just took it from like all of my like experiences of having those sort of trips, and then after that, I go back and I make sure everything's right. So like I sort of pull from like my experience, from like what I understand of it, and it's not necessarily about facts. It's more about the feeling and like how it, how if it feels Korean or not. And then afterward, I I'm really careful about making sure I got all the names right, making sure it's all culturally specific. Like I'm not describing a Japanese shrine, I'm describing a Korean shrine, that kind of like differences there. And then I like, get sensitivity readers. So the pressure is there, and I think it's good, but I think it's like a pressure you should manage yourself, and you should know that, it's what you are comfortable with, it's what you can be proud of at the end of the day, kind of thing, and not like what other people can say
totally
or whatever.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
you need to have a little stubbornness as an author, because you have to protect that initial creative whatever it is. All of us have, I think all of us have it. We're all like, oh, we're amenable, we'll take edits, but there's like, if you really believe in something, you're like, but I'm not going to budge on this. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, on another note, very excitingly, we actually have a special guest. I think we're going to be adding to the chat now. Hello, everyone say hello. The amazing.
Yay! Hi!
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Ellen. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed watching, Maurene eat her soggy noodles. And I definitely wanted to steal Kat's homemade mandu. Did you tell everybody that you made those from scratch?
I did. I made them with my mom's recipe. Here's one for you, Ellen.
I'll feed it to you. Can I just say that I have the honor of having read all of these wonderful authors' books before they got published? I have that honor, and knowing how amazing these guys are. It's just, I know I'm so lucky.
That's beautiful. Ellen, do you want to kick things off? Maybe give, in case anyone's joined, an introduction to yourself and your work, and then also, of course, want to ask you some questions about K-dramas. If you want to let us know what your first K-drama was that you remember, and also your favorite.
Yeah, who cares about introductions? I just want to talk about K-drama.
Okay, so about your books.
All right, so I actually wrote my very first series was a YA fantasy set in ancient Korea. So when Axie was talking about Queen Sondak, I was like, yes, exactly. How awesome is it that Kat has my book and I don't? So, okay. Thank you. And then I also write middle grade Spirit Hunters, which is a Korean shaman / ghost story, and a new fantasy that I had. Oh my gosh, there's all my books. I love you. And my latest which is Dragon Egg Princess, which is a middle grade fantasy, which is my ode to Studio Ghibli. So those are my books. And now let's talk about K-dramas, because I have been so antsy listening to you guys in the back.
Well,
so
did you
I will tell
food
you,
or just Yakult?
I just brought Yakult.
Okay, that's fine.
Because I figured anything that I brought would be cold, and So I'm also a pig. I would have eaten fast. Sorry, what did I miss?
Bloated noodles.
Yes,
it's fine.
Bloated noodles. Bloated noodles. I did have my Shin Ramen cup if I got hungry, though. So
that's good.
So you said first K-drama, and so this is one of those funny stories, because I remember, this is how old I am. I remember the big bags of videotapes that my mom would get from the Korean store, and they would have 10 weeks of a K-drama, and you would just rent it all out at once, 40 tapes to watch, a drama series. And I was always like, I'm never going to watch it because they're 50, 80 episodes long. Who has that kind of patience? Then one day I remember sitting down with my mom and my grandma, and I think a couple of my grandma's friends were there. They're watching. I don't think I caught it from the beginning even. I just caught it midway through the series. I don't know what the name of this series is, and it's about this girl who falls in love with really, really rich family son, right? Mm-hmm. And they get married, and she gets pregnant, but the mother-in-law hates her and throws money at her to get away. And she's pregnant, and she goes, and she's poor, and she has to live this terrible life trying to feed her little kid. And then suddenly the mother-in-law comes back and says, my son is dead, and now I'm going to take your child. Ha, 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 right? And so, like, the mother-in-law takes the little girl, like, she's just like 2 or 3 years old, and the poor woman has to fight to try to get her kid back. And it's like years of going to court and working like 5 different jobs, right? And then she finally goes to court and she like fights for her right to be a mom again. And she's going to get her daughter back. And the daughter's like 8 years old now. And she's so happy. And she goes on this like humongous shopping spree, gets all these bags of toys and clothing. And you see her, she's so happy. And she's running down the street with these bags. And bam! Bus takes her down. And the last scene of the drama, the entire drama, is this little 8-year-old girl sitting on a chair going, where's my mommy? And I'm like, wow, Niagara Falls. And I was like, I'm never watching another K-drama ever again. So then the first actual drama that I started watching again, of course, and falling in love with was My Lovely Samsoon. Because, right, my boyfriend, Hyun Bin, is in that one.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Axie and I are so prepared for you, Ellen. We like prepared visuals for you.
we somehow knew you would talk about this specific K-drama.
How could we not talk about My Lovely Samsoon, right? So yeah, so that's my very long way of saying that K-dramas both wrecked me and also bring me life now.
Aww.
I love that. Also, that sounds. I feel like I have so many K-dramas like that traumatized me as a child. That
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. If they're not making you laugh until you pee your pants, they're making you sob hysterically. Like I remember, did you guys ever watch 49 Days?
No.
40? Oh, don't watch it. My eyes swelled shut. I cried so much. And then the last episode was so depressing that I was so mad. I would have thrown my computer across the room, except, it's my computer. It's very expensive. You can't do that.
You guys remember the big drama that literally every Korean parent was obsessed with? What did she get? The Sandglass one? That was an epic. Anyways, at the end, like the bodyguard dude gets beaten up in a circle of gangsters and slow motion. Yes. Oh my god.
I know. Korean dramas just they destroy you. Whether they destroy you with fart jokes or they destroy you with terrible tragedies, they destroy you.
So yeah, if anyone is wanting to ask any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I have a couple more though that I'd love to ask you guys while we wait for more questions from the audience. I feel like recently we've seen a lot of Korean dramas, K-pop, Korean food, like all of this has sort of seemingly like very quickly exploded and become much more mainstream within the West. And for me, like I know, these things were always things that I loved, but were like at home things. They were things that I just felt like we're not really something that, or if I did have them outside of my home, I felt a little bit othered for them. And so, seeing this explosion, I guess, it's been such a mixed bag of emotions. And I'd love to just get your guys' thoughts on seeing that and what that experience has been like for you.
It's weird. This is a very personal answer, though, to be fair. Like, I think it's great, first of all, but it is also really weird because, like, when I was younger, again, like, because I grew up in an area with not a lot of Korean people, like, when I first got into, like, K-pop and also anime, so, like, which was, like, a connection to, like, an Asian pop culture thing, I was made fun of it for it. Like, people were like, you're such a nerd. Like, that's a nerdy thing to like. So I learned to keep it very private and very personal and like not talk about it because like, first of all, I didn't want to be bullied. And second of all, like it made like it made me really upset for people to make fun of it in a way that I couldn't articulate at the time. But now I realize it's because like it was my one Korean thing and people were making fun of my one Korean thing. And so I was very protective of it. So now like seeing people so like openly and publicly talking about like K-pop and K-dramas, I'm really like hyper aware. I'm like, okay, but what if someone trolls this chat? Like what if someone says something mean or rude or racist? Like I don't want that to happen to this thing that like I've been protective of my whole life. So it's been a very slow process to open myself up enough to like very publicly shout about these things that I've loved. But I will say on the flip side, like it's been really rewarding because like every individual person that I end up having discussions with about it, like we get so excited and like fandoms connect people. And so like to be able to like have other people to talk to about like K-dramas and K-pop has been a really refreshing thing in my adult life. So
And I want to say that it's actually wonderful to have it cross over here because it's the type of representation that I didn't have at all growing up. I mean, Koreans can't sing, Koreans can't act. Those aren't things that you should even think about doing. And I look at this wave of K-pop and K-drama showing them all that they are so effing wrong, right? So yes, we can. And that people actually love it and they can relate to it, even if it isn't something that they're used to or it's very different culturally for them. They're still enjoying it, and I'm so proud of that, and I'm so happy about that.
mm-hmm.
Like I took my sister to a BTS concert, like maybe 2 years ago. I think it was, what concert was it? Was it Love Yourself tour maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And the first concert I ever went to was when I was 11, and it was like a Korean American heritage concert. Everyone there was Korean. It was in DC actually. And it was my first concert ever, and I was I think 13, and it was like amazing. And I think Boa was there. She's like Atlantis Princess. But then 2 years ago I went to this BTS concert, and I would think maybe like 95% of the people were not Korean, and it was like so amazing to be like, oh my gosh, all these people love BTS so much they'd come to this concert. Like that's so like, I don't know. It's like they knew the lyrics more than I did. I was bringing my sister who does know all the lyrics, but I was like just so warm. It felt so warm. Everyone's so happy, and like it's standing in line. They ask you who's your bias. Like it's like it's just it was such like a good thing. I felt like, and so experiencing that. It kind of put away some of my resentment because I did also feel that resentment a little bit, just because again, like the things we loved were so like on the sidelines for so long, and now they're center, and it's like you kind of want to be like, well, I knew about it.
I took my kid to the New York BTS concert.
Yes.
I didn't go because the tickets were ridiculously expensive, and I'm an EXO fan anyway. But the funny thing was. I'm an EXO fan. But the funny thing was seeing that parking lot filled with people who had been overnighting to get into the concert. I don't think I saw any Koreans. That was like the wild thing for me. They're bigger fans even than we are. I mean, that's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's great.
I had a very similar experience at the BTS concert last year. I took my mom, who is like a huge my mom is like a fangirl. That's where I get any of my obsessive tendencies. And so for Mother's Day, I had just done Y'all West. I was so tired. And I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go to BTS, like at the Rose Bowl. I'm gonna die. And we get there and it was like, I knew BTS had I did so much research on K-pop that I'm like, I know what the fandom is like. It's not just Korean. That's still so shocking. And then to see it through my mom's eyes specifically, I wrote a tweet that kind of went viral about this because it was like watching my mom see this. She looked, so right before the concert starts, they play like random videos, and then the whole audience is like singing along, to every single video, even if it's not a live show. And my mom was like, they're all singing the Korean lyrics. I'm like, oh yeah, they are. They know it all. And she's like, they're not Korean. I'm like, I know. It's even hard for me to like sing along to a BTS song, And she was so in shock, and it made me appreciate like her whole freaking journey in America, you know, like, because we live 10 minutes away from the Rose Bowl. We grew up right around there, and I can't even imagine what that's like. You come here as an immigrant. My mom has dealt with a lot of crap, racist stuff that I've not dealt with, but she has. I remember growing up, and it was just very heartwarming. And my sister too. My sister is not into Korean stuff. She's way more Americanized than I am. I think it's because I'm older than her. So she doesn't know K-pop at all. She had never heard a BTS song until I took her. She came to the concert, and she was like, you know what's crazy is that all these girls are going to be imprinted with the hotness of these Korean boys, and they're going to think that like Asian guys are hot in a way that we didn't have the opportunity. I'm like, yes. And it seems superficial, but it's a big deal that like there's an example of like Asian masculinity or Asian, attractiveness that just didn't exist for us growing up. And I thought that was really cool. I do, however, feel a little protective over some of this Korean stuff when like K-pop now everybody. So basically I like went around town pitching Somewhere Only We Know to studios, and it's like this hunger for K-pop stories right now, and I'm like, that's nice. Do you know anything about K-pop? Do you know why K-pop is appealing? And then, so like when Rebel Wilson's like K-pop movie came out, I was like, I mean, maybe she'll do it right. Maybe it'll be good if she'll get like Korean people like on board. But part of me is like, I'm glad people appreciate it. Like I like the fandom. I have nothing but love for the fandom. But like people who are kind of like taking it as an opportunity to tap into like an audience, I'm like, you better do it right. Because like I put in so much work even into doing my K-pop book, and I'm Korean. So I just
cultural appropriation.
I just feel like don't mess it up. Or if you mess it up, I'll make fun of you.
I agree. I agree 1,000%. Also, I remember like during like the second Hallyu wave, when some of the bigger groups like tried to cross over to the American market, but they did so by making English language albums. Like Sonia Shire did a whole English album or like mini album. Yeah, Wonder Girls. Like and it like at the time, like, back then in like 2008 or whatever, like that's the only way they could foresee like breaking into the American market probably. So the thing that like makes me so happy about this wave is that like BTS and Blackpink and everyone is here still like singing the original Korean lyrics of their songs, and people are embracing it and still singing along and doing the fan chants and stuff. And I think that that's amazing because at the end of the day, like it is part of the reason it's Korean pop is because it's in Korean, which is why I'm so mad about that UK pop group. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a K-pop group that just debuted in the UK, and it's like they're singing in English and it's like mostly non-Korean people, which like I don't mind if there's non-Korean people in a K-pop group, like Twice and GOT7 and all those groups have like non-Korean people in it. It's just like they still sing in Korean. It's K-pop.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And Maurene, I started tearing up when you were talking about your mom. I've had a similar experience at the BTS concert, and I like walked in. I wasn't expecting to like be so emotional going for the first time. I mean, I was expecting to be emotional because I love them, but not for other reasons. And I remember I walked in, the first thing I had to do was FaceTime my mom because I was like, she has to experience this in some capacity because it was just like unlike anything. But yeah, I mean, we have a few questions in the chat. There's one that I actually think is amazing, which is sort of a turn to a different mood, but it's which of your book characters would have the highest rate of survival in a Korean historical drama?
I mean, Ellen's character, she literally survived. She's like the chosen one.
I basically wrote a saguk, so I mean that's literally what I did. So yeah, I'm pretty sure my character Kira would pretty much kick everybody's butt. Sorry, guys.
I will counter with Yenna from my book. She could probably hold her own because she was like lived for like a few hundred years.
That's true. That is true. She's also a Gumiho, so
She's
Like,
like, no.
Yeah.
I do wonder, are there Korean dramas that when you read each other's books that like kind of remind you of your books or each other's books?
well, My Girlfriend is a Gumio, clearly. For that,
Comes to
which I
mind right
love.
away. I love that drama too.
Yeah.
I also think Axie still kind of reminds me of the W
Sci-fi.
of it.
I
Yeah, like
love
the
W
urban,
so
you know.
much.
Well,
I love
Lee Jung
W.
Suk. Lee Jung Suk was
Uh,
my muse.
No,
What?
okay, so because I was gonna say for Rebel Soul, and you might not see it right away, School 2013, which is
also
a
Lee Jung Suk.
which is a contemporary school drama, but like think of like it's more the interrelationships that happen in Axie's book because like Jaewon and Young's relationship definitely reminds me of like the bromance between Lee Jung Suk and Kim Woo Bin in School 2013. So yeah, I'd say that for sure. But like I don't know, like I feel like for Marines, like there's so many feels that I get from like school rom-coms, like Sassy Go-Go. I don't know if you guys have watched that. It's like it's sometimes called Cheer Up, but it's set in a school and there's a lot of like it's like really funny, which like obviously Marie's books are really funny and like there's a lot of heart in it and it has a lot of like girl characters like in it who are like not like the normal feminine whatever girl, but they like break the norms, but they care about their friends and that very much reminds me of Marine's heroines. So I would that one.
I would also throw in the weightlifting fairy.
Yeah.
Because that totally gives me a Maureen vibe. That whole series.
I love that series so much. Their friendship and like that girl, the main character, is so like comedic to me. And their the love story was like very funny.
They dated in real life.
Really?
They did?
Yeah. They dated for a few months after the drama. They fell in love on the drama and
That's
but
cute.
So cute.
I'm gonna say for Spirit Hunters, I actually was like trying to think of. I feel like for Prophecy, like literally any saga. But for Spirit Hunters, have you seen Master Sun?
I love that series.
It's so creepy in the beginning.
Is scary.
Like, because Spirit Hunters is so scary, and all the ghosts. So, like Master Sun, she can see ghosts, and it's legitimately really scary in the beginning. It does get like lighter.
I think because Oh My Ghostess has the shaman, it also reminds me of Spirit Hunters.
Yeah.
Also, did you guys see Hi Bye Mama?
Oh no, my mom was watching that and she was bawling like every episode, so I'm worried.
I love that. I love that drama. You will cry, but I love that drama. And there's like the shaman crosses over from Oh My Ghostess into Hi Bye Mama, and it's so funny. That's like one of my favorite things when you see like characters from another series show up. Yeah.
Like in Crash Landing on You, there was a cameo by Kim Soo-hyun. He played the North Korean spy.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Kim Soo-hyun, My Love from Another Star.
Yeah,
I personally think I'm getting it right. He is one of the few actors that when he cries, I cry. I mean, his crying, breaks my heart. Oh,
he's a beautiful crier. So is Lee Jung Suk. Lee Jung Suk's a beautiful crier.
Yeah.
I'm such an ugly crier. It's just not fair.
Yeah.
Koreans are like so good at crying. It is a skill.
Korean
skill.
Not Korean American.
Yeah.
Let's all cry right now on camera.
Okay, ready? Everyone, like
competition.
Wait. There's a tear right there.
I see it. It's beautiful.
It is interesting. Like, I think that was one of the first things I picked up on when I started getting into Korean dramas is the way that they emote. Was like my first representation of seeing like how a lot of like the older women in my family emoted, like just like the way that they talk and the things that the way that they sort of get across their feelings. I was like, oh, okay, we're not weird.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, it does like when you first start watching it seem over the top, but it gets normalized for you eventually. Yeah.
So
But I feel like my family is so over the top. It's like such a Korean thing to be over the top and very reactive, right? So.
So we are, I think at times, we're going to, I think, end it with one final question. I think this will be a good one. Basically, you know, what do you think, or what do you hope the future of YA looks like for Korean writers and Korean stories? What's sort of your dream for the future of these stories?
More of them?
Rebecca. Gosh.
Can I say that, like, when I think about how little there was before, and to see myself on a panel with Korean American authors right there, I feel like we're seeing such a great future. I've read all their books. They're all amazing. And what I hope for is that we get to show the world that we're not actually just K-pop and K-drama stuff, right? And we're not just, you know, every Korean kid has to be a doctor or a lawyer, or like that we actually can be creatives. I mean, that's a future I want to see, that we just can do what we want to do. Kind of like how you see in the K-dramas.
Yeah. No, so emotional. Now we are gonna cry.
Yeah.
You know, Ellen and I, we debuted together, and I think about it, like, we've been on a journey, like, watching this. I can't even believe there's like enough Korean American specific stories out there. You know, when you and I debuted, it was different, and that was only 7 years ago, which seems like a long time ago, but it's not really. So yeah, I agree with Ellen. Like, I just hope that we continue to have enough stories so that it's not like each story has to represent all Korean American experiences, or that they could only be about the K-pop or like popular Korean culture du jour. You know, like, part of me is like, yes, I wrote a K-drama book, I wrote a K-pop book, but those are actually stories about teens more than the thing that I'm framing it with. And I feel kind of like I did that. Like, I don't think I need to keep going back to like these cultural milestones for my whole culture.
And I'm so glad you did it, Maureen, and not somebody else that's not Korean.
It's true. It's true.
It's been attempted, I think. Yeah, you know, it's going to be exciting just to see more stories and more, you know, just different experiences, and see it just being accepted as books, you know.
And like Silk, Maureen, Silk.
Oh yeah, Silk. I'm reading the Silk.
Yay! That's very exciting.
The Marvel comics right now, because of this pandemic, we don't know when it's going to come out anymore. But I did finish reading them, the first series, so hopefully soon. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I'm so excited.
That's super exciting. Yeah, I feel like I'm just going to piggyback off of Ellen and Maureen, which is fine because literally, you know, they paved the way. So walking down this path. I'm not,
we're like happily walking in this.
Axie and I are like behind you guys. Yeah. But no, but I think one of the things that I'm really hoping for the future, just based on my own experiences, is that, like, even though it's always an honor to be compared to other Korean or Asian writers, I hope that people realize that just because we're both Korean doesn't mean our books are exactly the same. Because I feel like sometimes, like, I do get compared to certain books or certain authors where we write completely different genres. And I can tell that the only reason we're being compared is because we're both Korean. And I guess, like, yeah, that's fine. And I'm never going to say, like, don't do that. But I will say that, like, I hope for a day where, like, they're not like, oh, well, there's already like a K-pop book out, or there's already a K-drama book out, or like, okay, well, if you both are writing a book that, like, is about K-dramas, then you have to, like, constantly compare yourselves and constantly be on a list together. So like, because technically Wicked Fox is a K-drama book, and so is one of Maurene's books, but I would never say that they're similar in how they actually play out. Like, in no way are they similar. But like, some people could try to compare it because we both talk about K-dramas a lot when we talk about our books. So I just feel like I'm looking forward to the day where there's more nuance when people talk about books by Korean authors, for sure.
Yeah.
And they said everything. I just more books, more stories, more mirrors, and a window.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, it has truly been an honor to be here with you all and to hear all of your stories and all of your thoughts on K-dramas and Korean food. I just realized I did not touch my rice. So I'll have a snack after this. But thank you guys again for joining us. Thank you everyone who joined us to watch or who asked questions. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much. Good to see you guys. Bye.